Hello all, Game Methuselah. I just wanted to talk to you about a subject that I think might be the most important subject for starting game masters. I've been pondering this for a few extra days. I was going to put this video up Friday, but it's a tough subject to really broach in the minimalist format that I tend to run games. And see if I can get this idea out to you so it works for you. My friend Craig now has been running his campaign for well over a year. He's doing a really good job, but I think as we're coming down to the end here, it's sort of wearing him out. And it happens when you're a DM. Even if you're only running every other week, you can get burnout. Burnout is tough. For me, when I ran my sort of now famous Albion campaign, really what kept me going was Matt's blogging. And I think in many ways that drove the story forward. Now, Matt is very reluctant to take any credit for this. He thinks, no, that wasn't a big deal. I just did it, and it was all your content that made the game go. And obviously, in many ways, that's true. But the thing is, when you are a DM, it's always hard to keep the juices flowing. It helps if you spread the work out. As I have told you, I think there are many ways, if you're a new game master, to enlist the assistance of other players. And if you're other players in a game, do things to contribute, because by now I'm sure you've all got your 3x5 boxes filled with your creatures and encounters, and you've been drawing magical items to give out to your players that are different than the ones in the books. I'm sure this is all happening. If it's not, well, maybe it will down the road. But Craig said, for our next campaign, what he'd like to run was Planescape. And he gave me the first three books to read. I'm pretty sure this more than likely was the original box set. This came out in the early mid-90s. Really wasn't looking to get into another role-playing concept. Didn't think much of it. If I did anything, and I did a little, I played the collectible card game. And he handed it to me and said, this is what we want to do. And I understand the basic concept that these people are planeswalkers. They go between each plane and the other plane, and it makes it really interesting. And they can go to different places at the drop of a hat if they can master the gates. Yay. Was when I started to read it, they came up with one comment that really captivated me. And that was the idea that every adventure ever produced is connected to Planescape. So every D&D module and every game that someone like me for the last 40 years has created for Dungeons & Dragons is all accessible by Planescape. And I thought that is something we need to talk about, especially for people looking to start their first campaign. And I thought, this is the best way to run a campaign. If you want to run a module, you go run a module. The people go through a gate, they go to the area, whatever realm it's in, go through and run the module, then they come back with whatever treasure and information they've gathered back through their gate to their own dimension and their own place to discuss the value on this. It works. Now, you don't have to tell your players that they're playing Planescape. No real reason to do that until maybe way down the road. Because the thing with Planescape is this: controlling everything, not just your world and your realm. And it works. It allows you to play everything. So what I was going to basically do, since you guys know I have two basic concepts of campaigns I want to run. One of them is Albion, the Twilight of Fae campaign that I'm writing. The second one is Empire the Petal Throne Tecumel, which I like. I immediately came up with an adventure, that you suck people in on, where they don't even need to know that it's Planescape. The whole point is some mysterious character comes to these low-level characters and offers them a large amount of money to make a simple delivery of what turns out to be metal and iron weapons. Nothing really valuable, nothing very interesting, not magic, not special, just iron and steel weapons, swords and spears and the usual things. And they want to deliver it to some other people who are going to give you a large collection of money and other things that are going to be sealed in cases, which of course you are not allowed to look into. You bring them back to me and I will pay you this princely sum and give you some other magical support and magical items that can help you in your campaign to be rat-catching adventurers. It's someone dealing in my main campaign who wants to interact with someone from Tecumel via a gate. Now, the good thing about this is it's an easy way to start. There's, of course, going to be a mishap. Somebody who doesn't want these faction to get these steel weapons is going to try to interfere, either by coming through the gate first and making a deal, either by jumping in and starting a combat while this exchange is going on. It could be many things. It really comes up to you. But it starts the campaign and it puts the little seed of concept in people's minds that you can go from campaign, adventure, location, and everything else through the use of these gates if you can master it. It's a nice way to play any of your campaigns because, as the Planescape Dungeons and Dragons folks say, if you've made an adventure or if you're using a module, it's connected to Planescape. Now, the nice thing about that is if you start your own campaign and you feel uncomfortable with it down the road, or you feel like it's not as exciting as it should be, or not as interesting as it should be, or you've read some really cool fantasy novel that has some new concept you want to add, voila, not a problem. You just find a way where they can gather some fresh herb, and that is what is needed to activate the plane gate that takes them to this other dimension. They're not even necessarily sure what this dimension is. They might have to look around. Is it the normal world that they're from? Or is it some other dimension where things don't necessarily work exactly the same? It's all up to you, but it really gives you an idea of lots of potential concepts for running campaigns. Now, take it or leave it, I think it's a good idea. I ran a very successful campaign back in the late 80s, early 90s that was based on an Avalon Hill 1985 game. It was called Dark Emperor. Now, Dark Emperor was basically about this idea of this necromancer who had acquired great deals of power, tried to sort of overthrow the human world, and they were able to rebuff him, beat him, and vanquish him to the world of the dead. Now, this may sound very similar to some very ancient fantasies that you've read in the past because it seems to have a lot of reoccurring themes. The idea there is, of course, in the realm of the dead, he meets this much more interesting character called Tolmor, the vampire king, and those two decide that they're going to wreak revenge on the human world, come rolling out of the land of the dead, and wipe out the human empire. If you've watched Game of Thrones, I think you may have seen very similar type concept. Game of Thrones immediately told me who the big bad guy was. I watched the first couple episodes. It was not hard to figure out that the White Walkers were going to be the determination of how the game was going to come out. Or in this case, how the story was going to come out. If you do not defeat the White Walkers, the rest of it becomes irrelevant. Now, of course, many years of boobs and murders, you've seen lots of different storylines. All of these could be individual role-playing campaigns. Adventure games, adventures, modules, however you wish to use it. It's a great way to play a game. In your mind, you want to know what the big bad guy is. You don't necessarily want to spell it out to your players. You want to let them sort of learn as they go. Now, they might have an inkling, and that inkling might be true, and many of the times it reoccurs back again to your main protagonist, and you're going to have your players run these adventures. They're going to do many, many things, side adventures, different things, different battles, to try to acquire power to sort of, at some point in their career, defeat this big bad guy in the final climactic campaign adventure. Now, you could run for years and years and years and never get to the final campaign. We sadly have done that. And there was never really a culmination of a satisfying outcome for the player characters. Games sometimes just peter out. And you don't want that if you can avoid it. So why I say this is most important is you really want to sit and think and come up with a concept of where your game wants to go. Something that really stimulates you, because the thing that normally peters out the games is the game master. And the game just comes to an end. But if you have a good group and you can come up with a compelling story and run consistently good adventures, you're going to have players that are going to get excited and get involved. And of course, you've given them really cool custom magic items, and they're going to be more interested all the time to come back every week and play in your game. Now, it's good to have ground rules. I'm going to play for 6 months, let's take a break, and then 2 or 3 months off, and then we'll come back and play again. Because after a while, it gets very tough to just keep pounding on this. But it is what people are going to want to play. The most important thing coming from a minimalist game master perspective is to keep it very bite-sized. I'm not a great map maker. I'm not fabulous at drawing. I'm not that good at drawing even the magical items. I'm barely passable. But I can paint miniatures and I can run a decent game. The best thing to do is find an overall world campaign map that somebody else has done. Now, Forgotten Realms is a really good game system. They have a huge map with lots of really well-known places. Since secretly you might be playing Planescape, you can utilize these. You might go to Greyhawk, Dark Sun. There's all kinds of different things you can play within Dungeons & Dragons and other game systems as well that you can go to and come back for if you want to play straight Planescape. But more importantly, You want a big map. And then make your initial figure 6-month campaign based upon a small map that you can produce. A local area, maybe in my case 100 miles by 100 miles, which might be no more than 2 to 4 hexes on this world map. A very small and controllable area, but that you can super detail the map. You can go in and you can draw dungeons and caves and cities and towns and have all these interesting mysterious statues and weird woods and all these things that exist within your campaign that people can go to. And when they go to those, you can have super detailed those even more, that have the dungeons and the adventures and the little buildings and the ruins and all the things you can do in a bite-sized piece, because you only want to do this area for a limited period of time. And at the end of that, as I had previously stated in another video, you maybe fight a bad guy boss who's sort of the lord of this area. When you defeat him, you've graduated to the next section, and that will be the next portion of the campaign that you run. If you keep it bite-sized, you have a lot less chance of people going off the rails and wanting to go someplace here, like saying, well, we're here in Albion, but we really want to go up here. Well, you've prepared none of this. They're now driving you crazy. But you've given them this map, this large map of England and Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and they think, well, I got the map. Let's go there. Now, in a West Marches game, that works. You could have adventures all prepared that are sort of generic. So if they go up someplace that you had not planned, you can pull this adventure out of your 3x5 box because you're well prepared as a minimalist game master and you're ready to go. And that can draw your story forward. But when you have a large expanse map, people will want to utilize it and take advantage of that and make things more difficult for you. Whereas if you give them a bite-sized map to begin with and give them many little motivations for them to do other things within that world, they're very likely going to do that. And if they want to go off the rails, well, of course, they're only going off the rails, 100 miles. Well, gee, what's in this cave? Well, nobody's ever reported back who's gone there. Maybe nobody's gone there and survived. Maybe people have gone there and there's been some fabulous treasure they don't want anyone to know, so they don't come back and report it. We don't know. Who knows what it is? This could be a Jabberwock or a dragon lair. It could be a horde of goblins in some city that they have built into the mountain. Could be anything. This is how your campaign goes. It's a great little thing to expand upon and make your own little story. And that's what all of being a game master is about. Controlling your game, making it very, very evocative and exciting for the players to want to go forward and see more of what you're doing. Keep it simple, keep it small to begin with. Be prepared, as I've stated in my Minimalist Game Master video, and you're ready to go wherever they go. And then you think about, well, what is the factor going on in this small area? Is it a human lord who's controlled by a dark elven bride who he thinks is a high elf ally? And, they're controlling him to do some nefarious things to put down the people in his community and his kingdom, so everyone hates the king, and he's your big nemesis to fight. Later you find out that, of course, it's not his fault. He's being, Grimer worm-tongued or whatever, to use, as you see, something else that's been done in other literature. And you want to then save the king to finish this part of the campaign. Maybe you don't. Maybe you still want to kill him. And that makes the adventure maybe go in a different direction. Remember, simple, small, with your concept and color in line, and the players can get caught up in your story. But if you keep it tiny enough that they can control it over the next few months, adventure into all these little cool places where you get neat battles and interesting magical items, you get to use some really cool lairs that you've pulled out of books. Maybe if you run out of steam, you grab yourself a module that fits in, and you put that module in there and you run it. It all works. And from that, you will grow with the players. The players will advance their characters, and you might see the grand story that you thought about in your mind at the very beginning changing and becoming something entirely different than you might have thought. Maybe not. Maybe at the end, the grand scheme is the same, but the pathway becomes different and they go through different things. And get your mind thinking first about what you want to see and what you love to do, and bring that in there. You want to make it yours and use whatever's out there to go. Now, if it's a bust, guess what? You know what? Nobody liked it. My system turned out not to be so great. Nobody cared about my bad guys. Sorry about that, guys. Hey, let's Planescape over the City of Brass. But the idea is, remember, your game is evolving. It's evolving with you and your players. Now, you don't want to allude that necessarily to your players. You want to think that everything you know is all codified and in some great tome that you're pulling out every so often so that you can read the entire history. It seldom is that way unless you are playing someone else's game, unless you are running a module and you are trying to utilize it word for word from their campaign. And I will tell you truthfully, my experience from seeing that and playing that is, unfortunately, most people can't always read and understand everything. Remember, the idea is to make it as simple for you so that you can concentrate on making all the adventures, the non-player characters, the magical items, the dungeons, the ruins, the bad guys that they run into that lead you to some ultimate bad guy that they have to fight. That's your job. Make it as really excellent as you can. Keep it simple and controllable so you can present it really beautifully and well and clear. And that will make for a great campaign. I hope this is going to be somewhat enlightening. I'm going to keep pushing on this. And as, of course, I start to develop my own campaign system, I will try to bring more of that out for you to see. And you'll be able to maybe utilize some of it. There's a lot of good books out there. I think you should take a look and utilize what you can, again, from whatever's out there and bring it into your game, but always make it yours. The idea when it's your game, it will be your story that is memorable. People won't say 20 years from now, oh yeah, we played this module. And who ran it? Oh, you did. Now, you want to say, no, Jim Murphy's campaign, it was awesome. We did this and we did that and we did this and then we gated through and went to this place and played this module. It was really weird and brought back the great Hand of Vecna and came back through and used that to defeat Jim's ultimate bad guy. That's what you want. You want people realizing that it's your game and all the pieces that you're putting together like a ringmaster are going to be what makes it great. If you want to follow me, I obviously have a Twitter feed, Jim Murphy at game_Methuselah. I have a Patreon page, and you can see things I'm doing and things I'm working on. I'm right now trying to get a couple things done so I can get the Teeth of the Dragon out to the folks. So hopefully we'll get it out there sometime soon. Until we have a chance to speak again, fight me devils fight, for I hate peace. Game on.